Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era's primary goal is to return to the form and function of the much applauded Heroes of Might and Magic 3. It picks up some tricks from later entries, sure, but you'll largely do the same things today that old heads like myself did in 1999. And this revival makes a good case for why that era is considered the peak of the series. And while its early access launch is definitely still under construction, Olden Era captures the essence of that one-of-a-kind turn-based strategy that has gone all but missing in the scene for decades. If you're not familiar with Heroes of Might and Magic, the basic setup is this. You and your enemies each manage heroes and towns on a top-down map that's filled with exotic-looking buildings and monuments, taking turns sending your warriors out to scour the land for plunder and power, killing anything standing between you and your prize in tactical grid-based battles. It can sometimes feel like regions of the map are dense with stuff to vacuum up relentlessly, with the occasional pack of guardians standing watch to create a fire break for your raging consumption inferno. I was never disappointed to find a new building to pull up on, but that feeling of discovery dries up pretty early on, even if building and treasure locations are reshuffled every time to keep things fresh. What remains is a frivolous but enjoyable barrage of decisions that always have to be considered. Do I spend gold to recruit troops from outside of my faction that are decent and convenient, or focus on the ones waiting at home several turns away that would benefit from all of my faction-flavored bonuses? If I don't attempt to fight the guardians of this crypt now, will an opponent swoop in and steal it out from under me while I wait to accumulate power? Every faction's cast of soldiers is an expressive joy to field and play, from the lowly Tier 1 grunts to the mighty Tier 7 juggernauts. Most factions are remixed versions of old favorites. Temple are the Haven Knights from back in the day, complete with holy warriors and literal angels, for example. My favorite is the brand new Schism, an icy cult of elves who went too deep in the water and brought extraplanar horrors back with them. The demonic Inferno is replaced by the Insectoid Hive, which answers the question, what if hell was somehow worse? All six have distinct identities in battle. The Hive's molten bugs are an overwhelming melee force. The dungeon can do a little bit of everything, as their mix of teleporting dark elves, mighty minotaurs, and scaly dragons cover all bases. This also means that not every faction feels great immediately, even when leaning into their strengths. The Grove has expensive units that can become powerful after significant investment. The Schism's power comes from its ability to increase the size of their armies passively, but that only happens through winning battles. Tuning balance is often an expected hurdle with early access games, and that's no different here. Figuring out what is a playstyle choice versus a legitimate concern is going to be an ongoing conversation. Every faction has the same amount of units across the same tiers, but they are all balanced so differently that you have to approach each of them with a different game plan. That's partly because units can be so mechanically different from one another from tier to tier. The Tier 1 Hive Parasite actually does extra damage to higher tier creatures, making them more of a precision instrument, versus the Tier 1 Necropolis Skeleton, which is just a cheap, reliable bone shield. Many units also have powerful abilities that you can spend focus points during battle to use, which adds another tactical wrinkle to everything. On top of that, all of these units can be upgraded into two possible alternative options, each with their own potential nuances and changes. I wish these upgrades felt more consistently different across the board though. While the bow-wielding Sylvan Fawns can upgrade into either a more powerful archer or trade the bow for a sword to become a light-footed menace in melee, relatively few units present a choice that feels so obviously stark. I'm sure the differences between the 80+ options will become second nature when I hit my 100th game, but I wish there was a more illuminating way to see the consequences of these choices earlier. Heroes act as the leaders of your warbands that can influence units with passive abilities or change the balance of battle with big spells. The 6 factions currently have a good amount of heroes to choose from when starting, each with their own novel abilities, as well as a more generic subclass that can be evolved into a powerful version of itself if you have the right collection of skills. This can be truly obnoxious because the new skills that you get are chosen from a random pool every time a hero levels up. And since you can only gain 8 unique skills total, it's possible that you'll never actually find the 5 needed to improve your subclass. I've probably done it twice in the 25 hours I've played so far. Heroes are also sort of bland in general. The portrait art is great across the board, really evoking a sense of personality that does not actually come out during play. The spells that they can cast all come from a wider pool and are learned semi-randomly, which can make magic feel generic. This isn't to say that spells aren't powerful, but being able to have a spell-based game plan is completely up to the luck of the draw when you build your magic-generating buildings, and how many extra resources you're willing to spend to buy more. And spellbooks really rarely ever reflect the themes or characteristics of the characters casting. Settlements serve as your bases of operations out in the field and can also suffer from similar identity issues. Each day, each turn, you'll be able to build a new structure that either provides new or upgraded units, more spells for your spellbook, fortifications against invaders, or general economic benefits. They're all rendered beautifully and at least appear starkly different from faction to faction, but they all provide largely the same functions. You'll likely build them up mostly the same way regardless of if your home is a temple to the sun god or a demonic beehive. Factions usually have a unique building or two, but they are not created equal. The Temple's scouting skyship that increases the vision range around the city is a nice to have, but pales in comparison to the Grove's mycelium routes that allows heroes to travel to any city you control instantly. Even the new law system, essentially a research tree where you spend points accumulated passively and by spreading your influence across the map, feels a little copy-paste from faction to faction, with keywords swapped for faction-specific details, unit growth buffs, signature stat boosts to be specific. When it's time to field these beasts in combat, things will seem straightforward at first. You move units across a hex grid, avoiding the occasional trap and terrain feature in order to reach the best positioning to get your enemies gone. Units are either melee, long reach, can attack from a space away, or ranged, so there isn't much fuss determining how to attack, and every creature will retaliate against a melee attack with one of their own. I love the simplicity of your attack options, but it can be hard not to just lean into ranged army compositions instinctively, since melee is such a higher risk endeavor. This doesn't negate melee units at all, but I did feel naked if I ran a squad of just face-checking bruisers, especially in the early game. Flanking and backstabbing aren't a thing here. So much of the depth and nuance of the combat comes from initiative, which determines which units act in which order, and can be manipulated by having units wait or delay their turns to let others act first. It does often make fights feel like you and your opponent spend the first half of every turn making your most valuable units stare at each other before they are eventually forced to make a move. But who you make wait does become an important tactical choice as battles get more intense. Spells that can alter movement speed and initiative can help break these stalemates, and they are way more valuable in Olden Era than I remember similar options being in Heroes of Might and Magic 2 or 3. It is a pretty savvy and interesting combat system this time around, though I do wish the battlefield variety did a little more to spice up things from fight to fight. Of the modes currently available in Olden Era, Campaign is my least favorite right now. It's more story focused than past campaign modes, and even has some opportunities to make some choices that will significantly change how you progress through it. That's neat in theory, but it comes with lots of small annoyances like unskippable cutscenes.
You do enjoy your formalities, don't you?
It's also where I encountered the most bugs. My biggest gripe with it, though, is that it renders a lot of the most interesting systems inert. Many city dwellings are restricted and can't be built, you don't interact with the advanced subclasses or laws at all, etc. These are obviously so that progression through the more tailored maps can be controlled, but it's also the worst way to play this game, especially if you haven't gotten any reps in any other modes yet. On the flip side, I really like the new Arena mode, which is just Olden Era combat between two players. You draft a hero, skills, artifacts, spells, and units almost like a trading card game, then square up with an opponent for a fight to the finish. This means you're subjected to all the ways randomness can affect these things more than anywhere else, but it's conversely a great way to learn and test synergies without having to play hours of a full run at a time. I couldn't try too many arena matches during the early review window, but I'm eager to jump in and test my might when the pool of players opens up. And while Classic mode is the right way to play, foregoing story for a pure test against either CPU opponents or human competitors online, I've been really smitten with the single hero mode, which restricts all teams to just one roaming conqueror who holds all of your army's strength and the fate of your faction's survival in its hands. It helps focus the flow, and is perfect for new players who want to learn the ropes without having to think too big at first. But it also appeals to a return player like myself as someone who is eager to find the line between creeping grind and faction supremacy, and the free time afforded to an adult with a job and a family and friends. Even though it's not a remake, Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era is a great example of a game that follows the rules good remakes should always follow. It's how I remember Heroes of Might and Magic 2 and 3, even if it doesn't try to recreate those games frame by frame with new graphics. The simple combat is the star of the show, as it was in games past, still hiding depth and mastery that makes the difference between good and great play. Its fresh take on older factions and entirely new additions are vibrant and fun in combat where it matters most, but could stand to find more mechanical identity in their city management and hero selections. And though some of the randomness that is signature to the series has been corralled, it still can serve to make otherwise interesting systems frustrating to interact with in a meaningful way. But the core of Olden Era is still as solid as the series has ever been, and though there's plenty to be tweaked and rebalanced in the coming months, this early access starting point can satisfy both New World Computing era yearners and newbies curious to see what the fuss is about alike.
Reviews director Tom Marks here with Jarrett Green to talk more about his Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era review. Jarrett, you've reviewed a ton of stuff for us over the years. You know, you're a consistent WWE 2K reviewer. You're a consistent Assassin's Creed reviewer for the last few entries of that series. You reviewed Dragon's Dogma 2 for us. You've also done sort of side-scrolly stuff like God of War Sons of Sparta, Double Dragon Revive. A lot of more action-y stuff, though, than I think people would expect for our reviewer of a Might and Magic game. But you have a history with this series, so I want to start there. What made you kind of interested in reviewing Olden Era? What is your history with the series in general?
I think Might and Magic, Heroes of Might and Magic specifically, was a game that came to me pretty young. I was pretty poor as a child, so everything I got was kind of secondhand, which is sort of speaks to the I guess eclecticness of my video game sort of interests. Is like whatever I could get my hands on is what I played, and that was across a bunch of genres. I think the first personal computer I remember getting had Heroes of Might and Magic 2 on it already. It was like secondhand thing my mom bought, so that whoever she bought it from was a big Heroes of Might and Magic 2 person, and like Lords of the Realm person. Like really like games, strategy games that were really big in Europe were on this computer in 1999 for some reason, and then I got really into it. So it was really cool to see, then I played 3, and, like everybody who was a fan of 2 and 3, we all kind of played 4, 5, and 6, and we're like, I think this is over. So when Olden Era comes back, we're like, oh, I think we're back. So I was very excited for the opportunity to see if we're back or not.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes that even the developers of this series sort of knew that what people wanted was to go back to that. Yes. So I guess then the next question there is, what do you see as like, what's the secret sauce to this series? Because there's not a lot like Heroes of Might and Magic out there. A couple of indie games that have come and gone as like trying to do that sort of thing, but it is a very unique flavor in the strategy game space. So what do you think they did so right at the time that this one is now trying to recapture?
Heroes of Might and Magic 2 and 3, and I guess a little bit of 1 specifically, has like a board game sort of appeal. Battles are more, I don't want to say chess, but they're more simplistic spaces. You move your units, spaces do specific things. It's all very simple, but the complexity is when these things interact, when you have to smash these things together. The overworld is a lot of running around and grabbing little things in the same way that you would like a big board game, something like Spirit Island or something. All these little things have something going on, and you can kind of sit and interact with it in like a little way, and all these little interactions build into a big sort of collection of things that have happened now that you really only get from a game like this. I think it comes down to the interaction with the overworld and the interaction on combat. Those are both little arenas for simple interactions that accumulate into a large sort of salad of things you never get anywhere else. I don't know that it's a secret, like something that only a certain people could do, but it's certainly something no one else has really done.
Yeah, and it is also a thing that takes tuning, because as the Might and Magic series showed us, it's not just a sort of plug and play, right? There are ways to make it not quite right or not quite
changing
work.
one thing can ruin it. Like if you change the hexes to squares, that makes a different game.
Yeah.
If you give all these units active abilities, now you're playing a different game. When you add backstabbing or positioning, that changes the game.
So looking forward for this one, early access reviews, we always give them the benefit of the doubt to a certain extent, right? Like they're selling the game. We review what is being sold, and I think it's fair to criticize something for, being a little light on content or whatever, even if it's labeled as early access. But we also know that more is coming, and this isn't the end. This is not, we should be expecting some little things like bugs or tuning or whatever to be tightened up as it goes. So like what's your wish list for this one? What's are the things that you think would really bump this up, bump the score up, bump your experience with it up, that you would like to see before it hits that 1.0 label? There's
a lot of little things that I wish like just worked better. I think a thing I didn't really touch on in the review a lot that I think is something that needs a lot of work is the UI. Mm-hmm. I didn't really mark points against them for the UI because that's something that is like absolutely changeable and normally does change in an early access period. Like,
yeah, and as long as it's like functional, you can
still do everything you need to do with the UI they have. It's just you have to push a couple extra buttons to do some things when you really shouldn't. And you can get all the information you need if you want to click around, but something like that is certainly like a thing I would expect to see streamlined on the way to 1.0 for sure. Mechanically, I think there's lots of fine tuning about, just the numbers that each of these units do. Like you find yourself, at least I found myself, and this is like as true as it was in Here's My Magic 2 and 3, where ranged units tend to get priority because you spend a lot of time waiting to figure out who makes the first move and then exploiting the first person that moves, and then the tactics happens around it. But as is with many games that have enemies that give you perfect information, when you can hover over a guy and see how far he can move, know when he's going to move, you can just wait for him to do that. But a lot of those little interactions, I'm sure, I don't know when early access actually happens for this game, but they have months to figure out what works and what doesn't. And I think it's fair to give them those months.
Well, like we said, there's not a ton like Heroes of Might and Magic out there, but if you want another review from Jarrett, his last one for us was 1348 Ex Voto, and if you want a very, very different kind of early access game, Windrose is a pirate survival game that Liana Hafer reviewed for us. And for everything else, stick with IGN.